Southbound Tri-State traffic is very heavy in the Gertie area with delays from 132 to before Eau Plaine. There's a crash with injuries. Everything has moved over to the right shoulder, but traffic's still heavy. Farther south of the Tri-State, traffic is heavy northbound from the Reagan Tollway to pass North Avenue. Eastbound Adams Tollway traffic's tight from Beecham to 53. Mount Eden's 22 minutes like Cook to the Junction. Kennedy, 43 minutes O'Hare to downtown, 22 from Montrose, 20 in the Express. Eisenhower, 45 minutes, 390 to downtown. Stevenson, 45 minutes, 355 to the drive. Ryan, 25 minutes, 95 to downtown. I-57 runs 22 minutes, I-80 to the merge. Bishop, 424. Lakeshore Drive, heavy northbound Bryn Mawr to Hollywood. It's traffic. I'm Jim Telemonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. 1 hour heating and air conditioning weather center time. Here's our meteorologist, Steve Williams.
Today into tomorrow, it'll be cloudy. High today 34, low tonight at 27, high tomorrow 36. Clouds again on Saturday, the high 37. Sunny and a bit milder Sunday, high 46. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
Currently 31. Next news 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Get Down to Business with Shalom Klein, the show for business and jobs powered by Tandem HR. Heard Sunday evenings at 6.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and Governor Jelly Belly gave his State of the State address, and against the backdrop of former State Senator Marty Sandoval pleading guilty and Ed Burke awaiting trial and all sorts of other corruption investigations swirling around the Capitol and many of its denizens.
It sounds like a house in disarray.
He focused on public corruption and, you know, gave you the lines that the Illinois electorate loves to lap up. Loves to lap up. Zero tolerance now.
It's no longer enough to sit idle while under-the-table deals, extortion, or bribery persist.
What about sitting idle while a governor rips the toilets out of his mansion to get a tax break?
Did he bring that up?
That was not addressed.
Oh, come on.
Elected officials shouldn't be allowed to retire and immediately start lobbying their former colleagues. It's wrong, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, the revolving door argument. What about lobbying while they're legislators, other units of government over which they have some influence, like purse string influence?
Did he bring that up?
What about all the effective self-dealing and leveraging of your public office while you're in public office?
Well, what about Mike Madigan being able to set the tax code and then works to reduce people's property taxes? Companies.
The old patronage system needs to die, finally and completely.
Right.
The input of women and people of color need to be treated as essential to decision-making, not as some token show of diversity.
Yeah.
Hey, JB, I don't know how to break this to you. Marty Sandoval, who's just pled guilty to federal corruption charges and tax evasion, he's a person of color. This has nothing to do with color, except the color.
What about gender?
Except the color green.
Protecting that culture or tolerating it is no longer acceptable. We must take urgent action to restore the public's trust in our government. That's why we need to pass real, lasting ethics reform this legislative session.
Oh, yeah, and then all the seals clap. They're all so serious. John Cass writing in the Tribune on the topic. Illinois politicians are so panicked these days, they need to get naked just to have safe conversations. He also recounts.
That's awesome.
He also recounts what Sandoval said to an undercover agent that led to his charges and guilty plea. Sandoval was trying to cover up the bribes that he was taking. Asked the federal informant working for this red light outfit, SafeSpeed, if there was a way to funnel the cash. Quote, "Do you have a baloney company or something innocuous?" Sandoval asked the informant. Isn't that just perfect? You cannot, I mean, this is Dickensian. You cannot make this stuff up. Do you have a baloney company? And, of course, that's Cass's wheelhouse because he grew up in family grocery store cutting bologna and other delicacies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Fine meats.
Yeah. He goes on, though, to Cass. Look, Democrats aren't the only ones you hold in contempt. Consider State Senate Minority Leader Bill Brady, that's super minority leader. He joined Pritzker in calling for tough ethics laws, yet, like Pritzker, Brady forgot an important thing. He's already cashed in on deals with the state-regulated electronic gaming industry. They make their speeches, they make their vows about rooting up corruption, they ignore the toilets, and they never stop with the baloney. Slice it thin, boys and girls. Slice it thin. For more on this topic, more generally, we'll pull back and incorporate our friends at IEA and SEIU and AFSCME. We're pleased to be joined by Steve Malagna, contributing editor of City Journal, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, who has written a piece that we talked about in some detail yesterday about the decline in government unions' strength, both in terms of numbers and dollars. That is happy news to people in the worst governed states in the country, like, say, here in Illinois. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
How you doing?
Good. I'm sure you're compelled by the sort of rhetoric you're hearing from Illinois' political class, and as you've been exposed to it around the country. But, of course, the real backstory here in Illinois, like so many other of these blue states that have heavy government union membership, is that the state is basically owned and operated by and for the public sector unions, the teachers, service employees, and the AFSCME, state, county, local workers. And as you report, over the last decade, we're seeing some significant attrition, such that we may have a day where there is a little bit more balance, even in blue states like Illinois, California, New York, New Jersey.
Yes, well, one of the things that's going on is that these unions have become so powerful in certain states, California, New York, Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey, that they've managed to accrue such incredible benefits for themselves that these states are now heavily indebted. And as a result of that, they've essentially, in the last decade, slowed down and even reversed the hiring of public sector workers. So what's happening is that's finally affecting unionization. In the last 10 years, we've seen a steady decline in government unionization, even as the private economy bounced back and the number of jobs in the private economy bounced back. And essentially, I'll give you an example. I quote a study in the piece which shows that for every municipality around America that had to double its pension payments in the last decade, and that's about the average, the municipalities fired about 65 workers for every 100,000 residents. So in other words, they're cutting their workforce as the benefits, the cost of the benefits grow. Now, for taxpayers, that's not a great thing, because it's like you're paying more in taxes and you're getting less in services.
Right.
It's like the anti-Walmart, We're going to pay more and get less. But it is definitely diminishing the power of public sector unions, although they remain very powerful in places like Illinois and in California, even to the extent that governments in these places are passing laws to try to protect unions now. This is a whole other area we could talk about.
Well, just because I want to put a fine point on this pension thing, right? We're the state with the highest unfunded pension liabilities in the country, and the point you're making is such salient. Oh, we're reducing headcount, and that's the good news. The bad news is you're reducing services, and this is the consequence of running a system you can't finance. And so I've got this list of 17,000 Illinois government pensioners who have pensions in excess of $100,000 a year. So I'll just give you one to give you a sense of what we have here, and for those of you to enjoy these numbers. Mary Curley, she retired from Hinsdale School District 181 at the age of 55. Her current annual pension is $297,000. Her employee contribution to her pension for her work life was $293,000. The expected payout over her life is $10.4 million. She put in 2.8% of what she expects to receive back, guaranteed, defined benefit, guaranteed, $10.4 million. $293 in, $10.4 million out, $300,000 a year. Oh, why can't we make that math work, I wonder?
Well, Well, that's exactly it. And of course, the issue is that if you compare that to the return that people get in the private sector, even people who have what we would call a sustainable pension in the private sector, it's completely out of proportion. And the problem is that the real problem with the pension system is that this is the kind of thing where people can make choices now, politicians can give away things now, and the consequences didn't happen until years later. And so that in Illinois, for instance, the whole automatic cost of living increase that they passed in the early 1990s. Yes. That's devastating. People don't. It's 3% a year doesn't sound much, but 3% a year compounded every year. If you're retired for 20 years, you almost double your pension. So those things were passed decades ago, and now we're paying for it. And you're right. The thing is that even small government people will tell you, it'd be one thing if they were reducing the level of government workers and cutting our taxes, but the exact opposite of that. All you have to do is live in Chicago to know that your taxes, your property taxes have gone way up, and all of the money is going into the pension system. So I guess I said for taxpayers, it's the only relief is you think these declines are cutting the power of the unions politically, but at the same time you can't miss the fact that we're just paying more and getting less for it.
I mean, these numbers are astronomical and hard to process, and it's just leaves everybody shaking their head. But do you think there'll be a time when pension checks bounce, or the money just completely runs out and they don't get direct deposit in their accounts?
Well, see, here's the question. The question is when we get to that point, and we have gotten to that point in a few cases around America with some very small pension systems in small municipalities. When we get to that point, the real question is, what will happen? Will the courts command the city of Chicago, for instance, if its pension system is going insolvent, to start paying the money out of its regular budget? That's the real danger here, because it's it's basically like a pay-as-you-go retirement system. I mean, a pension system. I'll give you an example in New Jersey, where their pension system is terribly funded too. They're paying out $7 or $8 billion a year in pensions. If that system were to go insolvent and the court said, well, you have to pay them anyway, then you would have to pay them out of your normal budget. There's no way that a state like New Jersey can afford $7 billion a year out of its everyday budget. That's $7 billion that you'd have to take away from something else. That's the real issue. We don't know. We're on unprecedented territory right now. Unprecedented territory. So we don't know what's going to happen when that happens. I think that eventually that's going to happen. It's happened in smaller places, and we just don't know what the courts are going to say.
And with respect to the impact of the Supreme Court's Janus decision that allows government sector union workers to opt out of paying fair share so they don't have to support the politics of their union that they don't like, the impact on that, it was projected to be maybe cost public sector unions as much as $1 billion in political money, advocacy money, across the country, which is fairly substantial. But what are the early returns on the impact of Janus?
Well, the first thing that's happened, which people don't pay a lot of attention to, because everybody looks when they want to discuss this issue at whether union membership is declining and how fast it's declining. But the first thing that happened is that all of those people who were not union members but were being compelled to pay union fees, they were called agency fee payers, and they were paying like almost as much as it cost to be in the union. All those people automatically stopped paying, and that's substantial. I point out that for ASME and SEIU, they had 210,000 combined fee payers, all of them paying money to the union. 98% of them stopped paying. So they're already taking a financial hit because all of the people who had said, I don't want to be a part of the union, and the state said, well, you have to pay anyway, those people have all stopped paying. Also, to a certain extent, some of the membership decline that we're continuing to see is probably a part of the Janus ruling. But in places like Illinois and California, the government has passed laws to essentially try to, make it harder to leave a union. So it's going to take time. You actually have a lot of groups, conservative groups in states which are now trying to educate workers, saying, you don't have to be part of a union. And some of the lawsuits are unbelievable. In California, there's a lawsuit because they passed a law which essentially said that an administrator, a manager, cannot tell a worker, inform them of their rights to leave the union. They can't say anything about this. So, there's a lawsuit now saying that you can't, the Supreme Court said people should be able to leave. You can't pass a law like that. So there are a lot of obstacles, if you will, that people still face, and we're seeing this play out in the courts. So this is going to be a long-term process.
He is Steve Malagna. He is a contributing editor to City Journal, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Check out his piece, which I tweeted out at Dan Proft, Labor's Love Lost. It's city-journal.org. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Balance of Nature, changing the world one life at a time.
It's been extremely helpful, I'll tell you that. And when I hear the different stories on the radio and so forth, which is what started me on it myself, I know it's real because people's stories are very, they're saying the same thing. Oh, I didn't know, I didn't believe, I didn't, and then when I started it, it changed my life. So in a very good way. It doesn't cure, it just builds my immune system and helps me live a little bit healthier life. That's the bottom line.
Don't wait to see what getting over 10 servings of whole fruits and vegetables every day can do for you. Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order of fruits and veggies. Start your journey to better health today by calling 1-800-2468